the factory that turns grain into billions of bottles. So you want to own a beer factory. Imagine spending $100 million on a massive industrial brewery, filling enormous stainless steel tanks, running bottling lines day and night, and sending millions of cans and bottles into supermarkets, restaurants, bars, and convenience stores. At first, the business looks almost perfect. The ingredients are relatively cheap. The production process is highly automated, and beer is consumed in enormous quantities around the world. But there is a catch. Brewing beer is only the beginning. Before a single bottle reaches a customer, the factory has to buy grain, hops, yeast, water, glass, aluminum, cardboard, electricity, fuel, and packaging equipment. Then there are workers, maintenance, transportation, marketing, distribution, taxes, and inventory. And unlike many products, beer can carry significant taxes and regulatory costs depending on the market. So the real question isn't how much it costs to brew beer. It's how much money remains after the brewery turns agricultural commodities into a finished product and moves millions of units through the market. To understand that, let's build the economics of a hypothetical large-scale brewery from the ground up. Which brewery are you buying? A brewery can be anything from a tiny craft operation producing a few thousand barrels a year to an enormous industrial facility producing millions. The economics change dramatically with scale. For this model, imagine a modern regional brewery capable of producing approximately 2 million barrels of beer per year. The facility has grain silos, a brew house, fermentation tanks, bright beer tanks, filtration equipment, refrigeration, water treatment systems, automated packaging lines, warehouses, laboratories, and loading facilities. And there is something important about beer manufacturing. The product itself is mostly water, but moving that water around the country is expensive. That means a brewery's location can be just as important as its brewing equipment. The best brewery isn't necessarily the one that brews the most beer. It's the brewery that can produce large volumes efficiently and get that beer into the market before transportation, storage, and taxes destroy the margin. Imagine the total initial investment is approximately $100 million. That is enough to build a serious industrial operation, but the actual cost could vary enormously depending on location, capacity, automation, land, packaging format, and whether the brewery is new or acquired. The first challenge is therefore simple. Spend enough money to create capacity without building more capacity than the market can absorb. The first $100 million, imagine $35 million, goes into the brewing system. Another $20 million goes into fermentation and storage tanks. $15 million goes into packaging lines. $10 million goes into the building, utilities, refrigeration, and water treatment. $5 million goes into laboratories, warehouses, and material handling systems. And the remaining $15 million becomes installation costs, initial inventory, distribution equipment, and working capital. The brewery is now ready, but it has already consumed $100 million. That capital has an economic cost. Suppose the owner expects an 8% return on invested capital. That means the business needs to generate approximately $8 million per year just to justify the capital from an economic perspective. And that is before considering whether the brewery actually produces enough profit to make the investment worthwhile. A brewery can produce millions of dollars in revenue and still be a bad investment if the return isn't high enough compared with the capital required. The stainless steel tanks may look impressive, but tanks don't create profit by themselves. They create capacity. The market has to fill that capacity, from grain to beer. Now the production process begins. The brewery starts with malted barley or other grains. The grain is milled and mixed with hot water. This creates a mash. The brewing system extracts fermentable sugars from the grain. The liquid is then separated and boiled. Hops are added for bitterness, aroma, or flavor. After that, the wort is cooled and transferred into fermentation tanks. Yeast converts the sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The beer then matures, may be filtered or conditioned, and eventually reaches the bright beer tanks. Finally, it is packaged into bottles, cans, or kegs. The process sounds simple, but every stage creates cost: water, steam, electricity, refrigeration, cleaning chemicals, yeast, hops, malt, labor, maintenance, and most importantly, time. A fermentation tank filled with beer is essentially capital sitting inside a tank until the product is ready to sell. The cost inside every barrel. Let's build a simplified cost model. Suppose the brewery produces 2 million barrels per year. A barrel is approximately 31 gallons in the US brewing industry. Now imagine the ingredients and brewing materials cost approximately $20 per barrel. At 2 million barrels, that's roughly $40 million per year in direct brewing materials. But ingredients aren't the largest economic problem. Packaging can be even more significant. A beer bottle needs glass. A can needs aluminum. Both need labels, printing, closures, cardboard, trays, or other packaging materials. And the cost changes depending on the package format. The beer inside the container may be worth only a few dollars, but the container, transportation, taxes, and retail system around it can determine whether the brewery actually makes money. Suppose packaging adds another $35 per barrel. That creates approximately $70 million in annual packaging costs. Already, $110 million has passed through the brewery in ingredients and packaging. And we're not done. The energy problem. Brewing is an energy-intensive manufacturing process. The brewery needs heat to mash and boil. It needs refrigeration to cool the wort and maintain fermentation temperatures. It needs compressed air. Pumps run continuously. Packaging lines require electricity. Warehouses may require temperature control. And the entire facility needs to be cleaned regularly. Imagine energy and utility costs average approximately $15 per barrel. At 2 million barrels, that's another $30 million per year. Now consider what happens if energy prices rise by 30%. The brewery could suddenly face approximately $9 million in additional annual utility costs. The machines haven't changed. The beer hasn't changed, but the economics have. In a brewery, energy isn't just another utility bill. It's part of the cost of turning grain, water, and time into a finished alcoholic beverage. That is why large breweries invest heavily in heat recovery, refrigeration efficiency, water management, and automated production systems. When you're producing millions of barrels, a tiny efficiency improvement can become millions of dollars. The labor and maintenance bill. Automation reduces the number of workers required per barrel, but an industrial brewery still needs people: brewers, engineers, electricians, mechanics, quality control technicians, warehouse workers, forklift operators, managers, sales teams, security, administrative staff, and distribution personnel. Imagine the brewery spends approximately $25 million annually on labor, maintenance, insurance, administration, and other fixed operating expenses. Unlike raw materials, these costs don't automatically fall when production falls. If the brewery produces 1 million barrels instead of 2 million, the building doesn't become half as expensive. The fermentation tanks are still there. The packaging line is still there. The maintenance team is still required. And the insurance bill continues. This creates one of the most important concepts in brewery economics: capacity utilization, the 2 million barrel question. Now imagine the brewery sells its beer to distributors at an average net realization of $110 per barrel, before considering taxes that may be collected and remitted separately depending on the market. At 2 million barrels, that creates approximately $220 million in annual net revenue. Now subtract the major operating costs. Ingredients, $40 million. Packaging, $70 million. Energy and utilities, $30 million. Labor, maintenance, administration, and fixed operating costs, $25 million. That leaves approximately $55 million before distribution, marketing, financing, taxes, depreciation, and other expenses. That sounds excellent. But again, there is a dangerous assumption. The brewery has to sell 2 million barrels. What happens when demand falls? The 50% utilization shock. Imagine the brewery sells only 1 million barrels. Revenue falls from approximately $220 million to $110 million. Ingredient costs decline. Packaging costs decline. Some energy costs decline, but fixed costs remain. The brewery still needs workers. The building still needs maintenance. The fermentation tanks still exist. Insurance continues. And the expensive packaging equipment is still sitting there. Suppose variable costs fall proportionally, but fixed operating costs remain around $25 million. The brewery's profitability could collapse far faster than its production volume. This is the manufacturing trap. When production falls, variable costs fall with it. But fixed costs stay behind, waiting for the remaining barrels to carry them. That means a brewery can be highly profitable at full capacity and surprisingly weak at low utilization. The packaging problem. Now look more closely at the container. Beer can be sold in aluminum cans, glass bottles, or kegs. Each format creates different economics. Aluminum prices fluctuate. Glass requires energy to manufacture and is heavy to transport. Kegs require different handling systems. Packaging equipment is expensive, and every package requires transportation. Suppose aluminum prices suddenly increase by 20%. The brewery may not be able to immediately pass the entire increase to consumers. Supermarkets negotiate, distributors negotiate, competitors compete on price, and consumers can switch to another brand. The brewery doesn't control every price in its supply chain. It buys commodities in global markets and sells finished products in competitive local markets. The difference between those two prices is where margin can disappear. The tax problem. Beer has another economic feature that makes it different from many ordinary consumer products. Governments can impose excise taxes on alcoholic beverages. The exact structure varies by country, state, province, or market, and these taxes can significantly affect the final economics. Imagine a beer sells for a certain amount at retail. The brewery doesn't simply keep the retail price. There can be excise taxes, distributor margins, retailer margins, transportation costs, and promotional discounts between the factory and the consumer. The customer may pay several dollars for a beer, but that doesn't mean the brewery receives several dollars. This is why looking only at shelf price can create a completely misleading picture of brewery profitability. The factory's real revenue is the amount it ultimately retains after the relevant trade deductions and taxes. The distributor problem. Most large breweries don't personally deliver every case to every bar, restaurant, and supermarket. Distribution networks sit between producers and retailers in many markets. That creates another economic layer. The distributor needs a margin. Transportation costs money. Warehouses cost money. Sales representatives cost money. Products may need refrigeration. Promotional programs cost money. And inventory takes up capital. The brewery therefore needs enough volume and geographic density to make the distribution system economical. A truck delivering hundreds of cases across a concentrated urban route can be efficient. A truck traveling hundreds of kilometers for a small order is much less attractive. A brewery doesn't make money when beer leaves the fermentation tank. It makes money when the beer reaches the consumer efficiently enough that something is left after the entire supply chain takes its share. The brand problem. Now we reach something that can completely change the economics. Beer is not just a manufacturing business, it's a brand business. Two beers can use similar ingredients and similar production methods, but sell at dramatically different prices. Why? Because consumers aren't only buying liquid. They're buying taste, reputation, packaging, identity, availability, and habit. A powerful beer brand can command a premium. An unknown brewery may have to compete primarily on price. That means marketing becomes an economic investment. Advertising, sponsorships, promotions, packaging design, events, social media, retail placement, and brand development. Imagine spending $15 million per year on marketing and commercial activities. That money doesn't directly increase production, but without it, the brewery may struggle to sell the beer it has produced. A brewery can have the best equipment in the country and still lose money if consumers don't recognize the name on the can. The distribution and inventory trap. Now imagine the brewery produces more beer than the market currently needs. The beer goes into warehouses. That sounds harmless, but inventory isn't free. The brewery has already paid for ingredients. It has already paid for packaging. It has already consumed energy. And now its money is sitting inside finished products. Warehouses cost money. Inventory can expire. And excess stock may eventually need discounts to move. This is why production planning is critical. A brewery doesn't want to manufacture as much beer as physically possible. It wants to manufacture as much beer as it can profitably sell. The ownership traps. The first trap is assuming beer is cheap to produce, so the margins must be huge. The second is ignoring packaging. The third is underestimating energy costs. The fourth is building more brewing capacity than the market can absorb. The fifth is ignoring excise taxes and distribution economics. The sixth is assuming every barrel sold produces the same profit. The seventh is allowing inventory to build faster than demand. The eighth is spending heavily on equipment without a reliable sales network. And the final trap is confusing a strong beer brand with a strong factory. A great brand can sell enormous volumes through efficient production, but an inefficient brewery can destroy the economics behind that brand. The factory verdict. So what separates a profitable brewery from a $100 million building full of stainless steel tanks? Volume, utilization, packaging efficiency, energy management, distribution, and brand strength. A smart owner starts with the market. How many barrels can actually be sold? At what price? Through which channels? How much will distributors keep? How much will retailers keep? What will taxes cost? What package format will consumers prefer? And how much production capacity is really necessary? Then the brewery is designed around those answers, not the other way around. The owner tracks ingredient prices, monitors packaging costs, measures energy consumption, controls waste, keeps tanks productive, maintains the packaging lines, and manages inventory carefully. Because the brewery isn't valuable simply because it can make millions of barrels. It's valuable when those barrels can be produced efficiently and sold at a price that leaves enough margin behind. The real economics. From the outside, owning a beer factory looks simple. Buy grain, add water, brew it, package it, sell it. But underneath that simple process is a massive economic machine. The brewery needs agricultural commodities. It needs expensive equipment. It needs energy. It needs skilled workers. And above all, it needs consumers willing to buy the finished product. Our hypothetical brewery invested $100 million to create 2 million barrels of annual capacity. At full utilization, that capacity can generate hundreds of millions of dollars in annual sales. But when utilization falls, the economics change quickly. The tanks still exist. A beer factory doesn't make money simply because beer is popular. It makes money when every barrel moves efficiently from raw materials to fermentation, from packaging to distribution, and finally from the shelf into someone's hands. The ingredients create the beer. The factory creates the capacity. The distribution network creates availability. The brand creates demand. And utilization creates the economics. So is owning a beer factory a license to print money? Not exactly. It's a capital-intensive bet on volume, pricing, consumer demand, commodity costs, taxes, distribution, and brand strength. If the brewery has strong demand, efficient equipment, high utilization, controlled costs, and a powerful route to market, the economics can be extremely attractive. But if the brewery builds too much capacity, Packaging prices explode, energy becomes expensive, inventory piles up, or consumers move to competing brands. That same factory can become a very expensive collection of stainless steel tanks. The most dangerous brewery isn't the one that can't make enough beer. It's the one that can make millions of barrels, but doesn't have enough customers willing to buy them. That is the real economics of owning a beer factory.